Long Kui and Long Ji both stared at Zhuo Fan with anger. However, Long Jiu didn't care about other people's views, just thinking about what he meant. He glanced at him again and saw Zhuo Fan's expression of the ancient well. Long Jiu couldn't help but gritted his teeth. Gamble. Second son, Long Jiu thinks that your judgment is unfair. Although Huayulao has something wrong first, but you let them take out the treasure of the townhouse, it is simply to break their way of life. You then destroy Huayulao, what is the difference? Long Jiu clenched his fists and shouted loudly. But the dense sweat beads had already oozed out of his head. His sentence today is equivalent to completely offending the Emperor's Gate. Even with it, Emperor Gate's attitude towards Qianlong Pavilion will change greatly. However, he was still willing to believe Zhuo Fan's words. After all, he saw it in Fenglin City. Zhuo Fan's decision had never been missed. Can't help but be surprised, no one expected that Long Jiu would make such a remark. Ting Huayulao, wasn't it obviously against the Imperial Gate? Chu Qingcheng and the Blue and White and Peony landlords hurriedly bowed to Long Jiu and thanked him for his support. Long Jiu shook his head with a wry smile, and sat back in place. He didn't even know it was a blessing or a curse. Squinting his eyes slightly, Huangpu Qingyan didn't go to see Long Jiu anymore. Instead he turned his attention to Zhuofan's direction. In one sentence, the decision of the Elder of the Nine Dragons Pavilion was changed. Who is this kid? That's right. Wang Pu Qingyan has discovered that Long Jiu first gave up the Huayu Tower in favor of his Emperor's Gate. But it was Zhuo Fan's words. That he would not hesitate to make Qianlong Pavilion and Emperor Gate evil, but also support Huayu Tower. What is the origin of this kid, and his influence is even greater than his second son. Also aware of all this, there are many elders present, including Chu Qingcheng and the two landlords of Blue and White and Peony. It's just that they didn't pick out the eye. And they looked back and forth on Zhuofan with amazing eyes. With a chuckle in his heart, Zhuofan ignored it, and only looked at the plan with Zi Xianyang. As if the two had been friends for many years. Jianhao Mansion, what is your opinion? His eyes gradually became cold. Wang Puqing looked at Jian Sifeng. However, waiting for the sword to get up with the wind, Zi Xianyang had already slapped him on the shoulder and chuckled. Elder 8, this matter is up to me, Xianyang. This is related to the future of our sword palace, you must. No, Zi Xianyang waved his hands impatiently, sneered and glanced at Huangpu Qingyan. And then looked at Zhuo Fan with a smirk. Boy, I saw you as usual, are you really the son-in-law of Huayulao? Yes. Zhuo Fan rolled his eyes unconsciously, so nodded. Hey. Then kiss your wife and prove it to me. Zi Xianyang pointed at Zhao Dandan and laughed proudly. Hearing this, Zhao Dandan's complexion instantly turned red, and he gave Zhuo Fan a careful look. His heart pounding. Zhuo Fan glared at Zi Xianyang, screaming in a low voice, what do you mean, kid? Rolling his eyes, Zi Xianyang shook his head and said leisurely, hey, hello. I know you want me to support you. But if you don't do what I said, then I don't know who to vote for. What? As soon as this remark came out, everyone couldn't help but hold his breath. And the sword almost ran out of breath with the wind. How can this kid play like this before the moment of determining the family's future survival? Xianyang, the sword said angrily with the wind. Elder 8, believe me, I know what I'm doing. Eye pupil narrowed, Zi Xianyang passed a reassuring look. That kind of serious look, Jian Sufeng has never seen it in his life. In the end, he nodded, still choosing to believe this disciple, and wouldn't play with family events. Okay, Zi Xianyang. Zhuo Fan's fists clenched tightly, looking at Zi Xianyang's complacent eyes. And wished that he would go up and beat him now, but he could not bear it anymore, and showed a craving smile. You told me to do it. As soon as the words fell, Zhuo Fan took Zhao Dandan in his arms and kissed deeply in front of everyone. Zhao Dandan's head was blank for a moment. When Zhuo Fan got up and looked at Zi Xianyang's excited face, he could not help but scolded, "Perverted, what do you mean? You want to play with the woman and go to play? Don't look at Laozi joke, ha ha ha. You have today, and I want to tell her about it. And she will completely die for you." Zi Xianyang laughed and danced on the table. Everyone looked at the young master of Jianhao House in a dumb, wondering what he meant. Just heard a bit. The two people seemed to know each other before. Only Zhuofan knew that the she in his mouth was Zhu Ningxiang. Shaking his head helplessly, Zhuofan sighed, "Vote, okay, brother, I support you." Finally, Zi Xianyang looked at Emperor Pu Qingyan and raised his eyebrows provocatively. "Second son, I will never support you. So, our swordsman, the government thinks you have judged unfairly." Wang Qingyan raised his fist fiercely, and stared at Zi Xianyang with fierce eyes. "Okay, your kid has a seed, wait for the son." Zi Xianyang raised his head without fear, and opposed going back. At this point, the judgment of the seven parents is apiece. The three of Chu Qingcheng couldn't help being overjoyed, thanking Zi Xianyang remotely, and then looking to Wang Qingyan said, "Since the second son's judgment cannot be recognized by the seven parents, this judgment is invalid." "Who said the judgment is invalid? Don't you forget that there is our emperor's gate." Wang Pu Qingyan snorted angrily. Hey, I never heard that the judges can still vote. The emperor gate started with invalid voting." Zhuo Fan sneered. Grit his teeth fiercely. Wang Pu Qingyan stared at Zhuo Fan coldly. If it were not for Zhuo Fan to kill halfway, I do not know what method was used to attract the two Qianlong Pavilion and Jianhao Mansion. Hu Iulao had already been unable to do so, and surrendered. Only your kid, the son, must be slaughtered by his own hands. Wang Pu Qingyan looked into Zhuo Fan's eyes, and his murderous intentions passed away. Seemingly seeing this killing intent, Zhuo Fan chuckled and said, "If the second son is dissatisfied with the result, there is another proposal below. It is better to take a step back and Elder Yan surrenders the antidote. Anything other than the Bodhi ficus can be chosen the same." "How?" "No, the old man, except for the Bodhi fibrous root, will not look at anything else." The poison hand medicine king waved his robe sleeves and groaned angrily. The corner of Zhuo Fan's mouth seems to have been expected. "It is not impossible that you want the Bodhi fibrous root. It's just the treasure of this townhouse. You can't take it for nothing. You have to use it to win it." "What do you mean?" Poison Hand Potion King wondered. "It's very simple. The Baden event is about to take place, and this Bodhi fibrous root is used as a prize. The champion of the event can naturally be justified." "Okay, the old man wants to see who can beat the old man in alchemy." "Ha ha ha." The poison drug king laughed out loud, which was like a bait. Wang Pu Qingyan pondered for a while. Also nodded in agreement. Only Chu Qingcheng showed their worries. Alchemy and treasure, who can compare the poison hand medicine king? Although this looks like the first line of life of Huayu building, it is almost the same as none.